Hey viewers, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about and reviewing the new Versus System House of X box. Now, Versus System is a card game I've been playing for quite a bit. Wasn't sure if I was going to bring it to the channel or not, but being the fact that this set is fairly new, I figured since I own it, I might as well review it. So we're going to break this review up into two parts. We're going to do it the X-Men side first, then we're going to do the Brotherhood of Mutants side after that. So let's hop right into the video. Alright, so looking at the box, we can see here it says Versus System 2 PCG and House of X there at the bottom. At the top it also says House of X, and on the side of the box we can see it says Upper Deck Versus System 2 PCG House of X. Now, of course, on the other side of the box, it says the exact same thing, 2PCG and all that. But now if we go to the back of the box, we can see some of the things it says. It says, "While you slept, the world changed." That's a quote from Professor Charles Xavier. House of X is a giant-size issue for Volume 5 of the Versus System 2 PCG, and it's the first issue of the Heroes of Krakoa battle arc. The set highlights Professor X and Magneto's conflict, and it asks you which side you want to join to assert mutant independence. You have 200 cards in all, you have a token sheet, and a full-color rulebook. It also shows you some other things about the game, like its playtime, how many players, and the play age. And also on the back, it shows you as well as some of the cards you may see in the box, or rather, you will see in the box, because you know exactly what you're going to get in the box, and there you go. That's all you get. Starting off with the X-Men side of the box, we're going to be starting to look at the main characters. I'm not going to go in depth on my real opinions or how good they are. They are fairly new. I've barely played with half of them. So I'm just going to give my first honest opinions, and we're going to start off probably with the main X-Men of the box, being Professor X himself. Now, he's the main character, obviously, of the X-Men team affiliation. He has 5 health or 5 wounds. He has ranged. His stat line is 1 attack, 6 defense. And he has the superpower, A Dream Worth Having. During the build phase, you can pay yellow and reveal the top 4 cards of your deck. You can put each X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants supporting character into your hand and shuffle the rest back into your deck. Now, this is obviously a really nice ability. You can search out those X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants supporting characters that you want to play in your deck. Now, it's important to note that a lot of these cards that came out in the House of X set, it has a lot of different abilities that say mutant loyalty, which basically means you have to have only X-Men or Brotherhood of Mutant cards in your deck. So even though he's an X-Men main character, still having Brotherhood of Mutant cards in his deck is still a viable option, much more so than any other team affiliation. It's really just a nice ability to filter out supporting characters that you may need. And then, of course, his level up, which he needs to have. If you guys aren't aware, in the Versus system, every main character, which is kind of like your leader card in other games, has 2 levels. They go from their first level, and they have a level up condition that they can use to level up into their second level, which is usually more powerful and probably the reason why you're playing the main character in the first place. Now, his level up is all mutant kind are welcome. Level up 4, which means he needs 4 XP to do it. When an X-Men or Brotherhood of Mutant supporting character appears on your side, Professor X gains 1 XP. So this really isn't a hard level up condition to meet, especially with that first Dream Worth Having ability. He can easily level up from level 1 to level 2 at it's not very hard or inconsistent, very decent level up. It's obviously going to take you minimum, it's actually, if we do the math, you can play a card turn 1. Technically, if you have the right cards, you can play 2 cards turn 2. That will be 3 XP if they're all X-Men or Brotherhood of Mutant cards. And then theoretically, you can play another card turn 3. So really, you could level up turn 3, even though you need 4 XP and need to play a character. You don't have to play only 1 character every turn. So you could easily level up turn 3. But what's more likely is turn 4, turn 5. You most likely are going to get the level up. But it is very consistent, and although he has 5 health, since it's only 4 XP, you will most of the time be leveling up before you die. Now, if we move on to his level 2, his stats obviously change. He gets a buff of 3 attack, 12 defense. Now, 12 defense is a lot. Main characters rarely go up to 12. It's very rare. You'll see 10 at times, but even those times, it's the character has to have a big drawback. His personal drawback, just right off the bat, is that his attack is still pathetically low at a 3, which is near useless, especially as a level 2. But 12 defense is pretty high, and that is for note.
He still retains that dream worth having superpower, so he can still search out his X-Men and Brotherhood supporting characters, but he now has a new superpower called Dreams Worth Fighting For. During the main, you can pay a red, and you can choose an X-Men or Brotherhood immune supporting character on your side, then put +1/+1 counters equal to its attack on another X-Men or Brotherhood immune supported character on your side. So you can buff another one of your characters using the power of the power of a different character on your field. So if you have a big guy out, you can take those +1/+1 counters and you can put on another smaller guy somewhere else, or you can put on another big guy, bring him up to his level, buff him. I really like this this ability right here. It's very good, especially with a supporting character we're going to talk about later in this video. All in all, I think that this main character is generally okay. I think he might end up being fun, casual, on the better side. Little new to the game, so I'm not really into the competitive scene. I don't know how competitive each card was going to be in the history of the different competitive cards, but this card does seem fairly decent, especially comparing him to the games I've played and the little experience I have. At least he's going to be a fun, not garbage pick if you're just trying to open this box and have some fun. Next up, we're going to go through another main character that I think is fairly generic, and that is Cyclops. Now, I'm going to talk about my complete review of the X-Men side of this box by the end of the video. So I'm going to give my thoughts on another Cyclops. So if you don't know, we've had 3 Cyclops main characters at this point. So I'm going to talk about my in-depth opinion on another Cyclops main character. But just looking at the pure card itself, he has 5 wounds, which is generic. You'll see that a lot. X-Men team affiliation, obviously. Cyclops is the name. He has range because, the beams. He has 4 attack, 3 defense. That's obviously higher on the attack side. If you guys don't know, this is like your leader card. So if it dies, you lose the game. If it hits all 5 of its wounds or go away, you lose the game. So with a main character with lower defense, it's usually a more risky play. Obviously, he has range, so you can put him in the back row, protect him a little bit. But generally, character with lower defense and higher attack tend to be less competitive than the other way around. And especially since he only has 5 health, he's definitely not going to stay around for very long if your opponent has a decent counter to the character. But that's not really the point of this character. This character sort of like killed your opponent before they kill you type of thing. So he has the Unleash Optic Beam, a superpower. You pay a blue in the main. Cyclops strikes with double his attack when range attacking this turn. So striking is kind of the act of attacking, or rather the instance in which your character reduces your opponent's defense by their own attack to see if they stun them, which is like hitting them or dealing damage. So really, this ability is kind of just saying he has double attack the next time he attacks his turn. It's not exactly the same, but it is pretty much that. He has double attack this turn when attacking. So his attack goes from a 4 to an 8 if you use the superpower pretty much when he's attacking, which 8 is pretty high, especially being the fact that you can do this turn 1. No character, especially because he has range 2, very few characters are going to be safe from his onslaught turn 1. But again, this character is sort of a blitz, rush down main character. You want to kill your opponent before they kill you. His level up condition is Battlefield Leader. He needs a line to level up, and when a character attacks, Cyclops gains an XP. So honestly, this would seem like it's going to take quite a bit of time, but there's actually one card in particular off the top of my head called X Factor. It came out in the core set of the game, and it's an X-Men plot twist, which is sort of like their spells in Magic the Gathering, your their option cards in Digimon, or your action cards even in Universes, but it's not, action cards are a little different. The point is, there's a plot twist which allows you to ready a character, which means you can attack twice with a singular character in a turn. What I'm saying this is using that card, as well as the fact that if you play really cheap characters and just play a bunch of them and just attack with them, just throw them at your opponent, you'd be able to level up quickly. Now, if you do the quick math, you can play one character turn 1, but forget you also have Cyclops. They both can attack, so that's 2 XP turn 1. Turn 3, if you play 2 characters, and let's be honest, the first character you play probably won't be alive, but that's 3 characters you attack, that's 5 XP in total. And then turn 3, you may be able to play 3 characters plus Cyclops, and if they all attack, that would be another 4 XP, making you 9. You could theoretically, though probably not that easy to level up, turn 3. Probably won't happen very often. But being the fact that, like I said, you can play a lot of characters and attack with them all, regardless if they're going to do damage or survive the attacks, you can level up a lot quicker than it may originally seem, being the fact that the level up condition is 9, which is pretty high. Okay, when you level up, though, you get obviously a stat boost. You go up to 6 defense and 8 attack, so your stats actually double. 6 defense is fine. It's actually pretty average. 8 attack is higher for most main characters. He retains the Unleash Optic Beam attack, but he gains Battlefield Commander, which is during the main phase you can pay a red, ready any number of characters on your side, of other characters, so you can't ready Cyclops. So generally this power is kind of okay, it's kind of fine. Not to say that it's bad or anything, but you're paying a red to ready multiple characters. It's definitely okay. I mean, depending on how many characters on the field, obviously the power of this superpower will change drastically, but generally you'd be able to get a decent amount of mileage out of it, especially being the fact that you'd obviously be building your deck around this main character level 2 if you end up playing him. Next up, we're going to take a look at Storm. Storm is obviously another X-Men main character, 5 health. Again, that's about average. She has Flight. Flight allows you to attack even protected characters, so it's a pretty good keyword power to have. She has 3 attack and 4 defense, the opposite of Cyclops, so this is a little more average what you'll see from most main characters. They have either 2 attack or 3 or 2 attack and 4 defense. She has a special superpower. She has a superpower, Master Thief. During the main, you can pay a red, and each enemy player discards a random card. Definitely, it's a good superpower to have if you're playing with multiple people at a big table, because Versus System kind of supports that kind of play. This becomes a pretty good superpower. You'll just be discarding up to 3-4 cards with this one superpower, one from each of your opponents. But in a one-on-one game, you're really going to end up losing 1 card. It is random, which is good. If you got to choose, it would obviously be great, but it is random, so your opponent could end up losing something they really need, but also they could lose something they didn't really care about, and it's really only 1 card. In the Versus System, you draw 2 cards a turn, so it's really not something that they can't regain if it's not really that important from hand size wise. But her level up condition is Mistress of the Elements. She levels up with 4. When a basic location on your side appears on your side, Storm gains an XP. So when you play a location, which are sort of like lands in this game, not exactly, but kind of. When you play one, you get an XP. You can play 1 a turn, 1 resource or location a turn. So her minimum level up is 4. She's 5 health. If you fail to pull a location, her level up can go from 4 to 5, 6. Obviously, it's a card game. You could just brick and not get the card you want. But generally, you should be able to get 4 locations in enough time to level up before she dies. Though if you fail to do so, it might also be not really, out of the realm of possibilities. Though you'll see in a minute that in this deck, you'll particularly want to be running more location colors than normal, because when she levels up, she gains 6 attack. She goes up to 6 attack and 7 defense, which is a little bit above average. Usually a character will either have 6/6 on their stat line, though of course 7/7 is not completely rare either. So it's average really. 7/6 attack, 7 defense. She has this new superpower in which she has to play 1 of each color: blue, yellow, green, and red, excluding earth and space. But she plays one of the 4 main colors. She can create a weather for the rest of the game. Now, she has a bunch of different weathers, so you can choose to create when she uses a superpower. A blizzard. At the start of each enemy player's main phase, they freeze a character on their side. Freeze basically means they tap and they basically can't attack that turn. Fog. Enemy defenders can't strike, which means when you attack characters, they can't attack back at you, basically. Cyclone. Each enemy character loses and can't gain flight. Flight is actually a really important keyword power in this game. It is almost important for almost every deck to have some flight in their deck. So obviously them losing flight and you keeping flight means you have a decent advantage over your opponents, especially if you're playing a more defensive game. Thunderstorm. At the start of each enemy player's build phase, put 1/1/1 counter on each character on that side. -1 reduces their stats, makes them easier to attack, makes it harder for them to attack you. Obviously, depending on how many characters they play, you'll get way more mileage out of this last one than if they're playing one or they have few characters on their field at the time. Because if they have many characters, it'll be a lot harder. But if they have just a couple, then it'll be a lot better, But if they just have a couple, then it won't really be that powerful. I kind of like this main character. It's one of those fun main characters. I don't ever see this becoming super powerful. Again, I'm not really that competitive into the game, but because of having to pay one of each color, which is not exactly impossible to do, but it's very hard, and to basically say that if you want the full effect, you kind of have to pay them multiple times, because each one of these are fine on their own, but not exactly amazing. I think it's pretty interesting. I think somebody could have fun with this deck. I'm not sure, though, if it'll ever become great. Okay, now this main character, Marvel Girl, or Jean Grey, Phoenix, technically has been in the game before, but this is her first time showing up as an actual X-Men support character, main character, so that's interesting, that's cool. She's X-Men team affiliation, as I just said. She has flight and range, which is important, because when you have flight and range, you pretty much have free reign to attack over the entire board state. She has 5 attack and 1 health. Pitiful. 1 health, 1 defense, pitiful. 1 defense is actually horrendous. I'm not even gonna lie. It's straight like that. 5 health and 1 defense is nigh the lowest you can really go. It's so bad. And again, this is your main character. If this person dies, it's over. And this person has such low defense that quite literally she's barely surviving, because if a character ever hits with 0 defense, they instantly take a damage. They instantly get stunned. So she's at the bare minimum of life. If anybody attacks her and the attack goes through, she crumbles, she folds. She does have the superpower to help that out a little bit. Telekinetic shield. Any turn combat, so she didn't have to be in the combat, and it can be on your opponent's turn as well. You have to pay yellow. You can choose a defender on your side to get +0 attack, +10 defense. Obviously, that's a direct counter to her having 1 defense. But a little piece of information, it's not enough. A superpower, they have to use. Superpowers aren't easy to use, really. They're usually, you can use them a bit, but you can easily get messed over by not drawing the right location color. And to say that you have to keep spinning this every time someone attacks you to stay alive, especially when they attack you with almost any character, because she only has 1 defense, it's not enough to counteract the 1 defense. The save the day superpower is, level up condition. Level up 2, when a defender on your side survives a combat, Marvel Girl gains an XP. Obviously, because she's so weak and your opponent would be targeting her to try to kill her as fast as possible, they made this level up condition really low, but it's not really crazy. I believe it would be pretty easy to reach this level up condition. Especially with the telekinetic shield, you can protect other characters in the front row. If you put her in the back row, other characters in the front row, use this power to protect them, make sure they can't get stunned. I think you can level her up decently. And then when she gets to level 2, she gets 10 attack now. So she doubles her attack. She also doubles her defense, but you may remember that she had 1 defense. So now it's 2. 2 is still pathetic. 1 cost characters, 1 cost supporting characters can still stun her very easy, very efficiently. Obviously, if she uses a telekinetic shield, I get that she won't get stunned, but also if she doesn't use a telekinetic shield, if you don't have the yellow, you can get folded by anybody. Now she has the telekinetic weapon new superpower, which is basically any combat, she doesn't have to be in the combat, it doesn't have to be your turn, she can pay a green, and you can choose an attacker on your side to get +10 attack, +0 defense this combat. So obviously now, after trying to survive when you're level 1, you can finally get on the offense as level 2. This is one of those main characters where I think most people are just not going to bother with it. I don't think it'll be very good, and I think most players, even if you're a Jean Grey fan, which I don't think even exists, I don't think anybody's really going to be thinking too hard about playing this main character in particular, especially with some of the better options that came in this box. Of all the main characters in the X-Men side of the box, easily Banshee is the one I'm most excited to talk about. Not only because he's a main character we haven't seen before, the other 4 of the 5 main characters we got, all characters who have had main characters before. Banshee's the only one who's just showing up in the game currently, so obviously he's the most exciting, but also because his abilities are a lot cooler than some of the other abilities we got in this box. So, Banshee, X-Men team affiliation, 5 wounds, 5 health, 3 attack, 4 defense, flight. He has the superpower Bold Yeller. Now, I really like the superpower. Any turn combat, so your opponent's turn or your turn, but Banshee has to be in the combat. You can pay a blue. You can daze an enemy character in the combat. Daze is sort of like stunning, which is when you flip a character upside down and they can't be attacked or attack that turn, but they just don't take a damage. So you can daze the character, which basically means you can get off the field, or rather, you don't kill it, but you can just get rid of it for a turn, and essentially put it face down. I guess, it's kind of like stunning a card in Universus, dazing, when you daze a character. Point is, it's a very good control ability and a good control option, especially early game. Your opponent, it doesn't have to be a supporting character either. So your opponent's main character, if you think they're going to give you trouble, dazed that turn, so you can do whatever you want to do that turn. Or a supporting character that's trying to stop you from getting to the main character, dazed, so you can get to the final goal. Now, his level condition is Sonic Boom. Level up 4, when an enemy character gets turned face down, which you would do by dazing, but also you can do it by attacking and stunning characters, you get an XP. Obviously, most early game characters have 1 health. The only ones who have multiple health are main characters, so you can at best get at least like 2 XP a turn. So you can level up theoretically turn 2 actually, but more likely you'll be around turn 4 that you end up leveling up. Still, you have 5 health. You should be able to level up before your character dies. Now, when he gets to level 2, he goes up to 9 defense and 6 attack, which is instantly higher than Storm's 7 defense and 6 attack. But again, it's not crazy high. It's about average, just a little bit above. He keeps a Ball Dealer ability, but he gains a new ability, Sonic Screech, a new superpower. During the main phase, you can pay a red. Put 4 -1/-1 counters on an enemy character, and here's the kicker. If they are equipped to something, you stun them. If something is equipped to them, you stun them instead. Now, stunning, if you stun a character, it's like dazing, except they take a damage. If you daze a character, they just flip upside down. They just flip down. Sonic Screech is a really good superpower. Now, many people may know about Thor, who was an old main character who came on one of the earlier sets, and he was great. He had a superpower where he could put 3 -1/-1 counters on a character. -1 counters obviously reduce your opponent's stats by that much, the character they're on. So, the reason why that ability in particular was so good is because you could access it early game. This one obviously is going to take you a bit to get to it, but 4 is obviously higher than 3, and the fact that if they are equipped by chance, they just instantly get stunned and just take a damage. Obviously, Sonic Screech is a great superpower, and it's probably going to be the reason why many people play Banshee, and I really like that superpower. I really like this main character. Obviously, having 5 health and average stats means that he's probably not going to become the super most competitive character. None of his abilities are absolutely oppressive, but I do think he'll be a good option. If you play in tournaments, you'll probably see him around, and I think he'll be fun for casual play as well without being too busted. I can't wait to see this character on the field. Versus system, your main character is sort of like your leader card. He's the main focus of your deck. You're going to be building your deck around this guy. That's important. But those little cards that go into your deck that also represent characters throughout the comic books and other forms of media. And so when you're playing this game, you got to also look at the main character. The supporting characters is what they're called. Sort of like battle cards in Dragon Ball. There's quite a bit of them on the X-Men side of the box alone. We're going to do our best to look through each and every one of them. We're not going to get too in depth, but let's go. First of all, we'll start off with Bishop. He's a 1-cost character, which means on turn 1 you can play him if you have 1 resource down. The resource system in this game is very simple. There's locations you can put down as resources, or any card from your hand can go face down as a resource. So every turn you should be able to gain 1 resource pretty easily, especially in fact you draw 2 cards a turn. Okay, so he's a 1-cost, so you can play him turn 1. His stats are 1/1, range, 1 health. These are actually generic stats. 1/1 is pretty low, but you don't expect your turn 1 cost to stay around for a bit. Bundle of Energy. When Bishop appears, put a +1/+1 counter on him for each blue location on every side. So turn 1, if you're going first, this is at best 1 blue location, so you're getting 1 +1/+1 counter. If you're going second and your opponent played a blue but didn't spend it, then you could get 2 +1/+1 counters. Obviously, you don't have to play a 1-cost character on turn 1. You could play them on later turns, which means you could get, theoretically, up to like 8 +1/+1 counters. Obviously, that is not realistic, but that's the maximum you can get from this. What do I think about this card? I think it's fine. Depends on how many blue you're playing and how many blues you think your opponent's going to play. Competitively, I don't think it really has a use, being the fact that if your opponent's not playing blues at all, they're supporting only on your own blues and how many you have at the time and how many you haven't spent yet. So generically, you're going to end up with maybe 1 or 2 +1/+1 counters, which is just going to make him a 3/3, and that's really not enough for him to be useful past turn 1. And in turn 1, again, you can only have at least like 2 +1/+1 counters on him from this ability. I think he's fine. I think he's cool. I like Bishop as a character. Don't think he's the greatest supporting character. The other 1-cost character we got in this box is Jubilee. Obviously, you might know her from the TV show. She has 3 attack, 2 defense, obviously higher than Bishop's. She has range, and she has the ability Fireworks. Enemy characters have -1, -0 while in combat with Jubilee. So obviously that means she can attack, stun, and damage characters with up to 4 defense with her when she attacks, because she gives them -1. Wait, no, sorry. She can attack and not get stunned back by characters with up to 3 attack. I don't think this character is either that great. Admittedly, I know that in the later set, X-Force, we're going to get Beast, which is a beast of a character, which is a much better turn 1 character. And we also get Caliban, I believe, in that set as well. So there's going to be better X-Men characters in this arc of sets alone. I think these two are decently underwhelming. Not to say that they're bad or anything. Again, I'm not exactly the most knowledgeable when it comes to competitive play. On to the 2 costs in this box. We have Blink. She has 1 attack, 6 defense. 6 is pretty high for a 2 cost. Obviously, it's not crazy. 6 is not hard to stun, but it is higher than the average for a 2 cost. She has superpower Displacement Field. In combat, any turn, she can pay a red, and as this combat resolves, each enemy character strikes itself instead of a character on your side. So again, striking is sort of the act of attacking. So basically, what this power basically says is that you pay this red and your opponents attack themselves instead of attack you. It's definitely a cool little superpower. I really think it's interesting. I really think it's nice, depending on who you're attacking. The next 2 cost is Iceman. He has 2 health this time. In this set in particular, supported characters' health go up a lot higher than in previous sets. A lot of characters 2s, some with 3s. Early game I'm talking about. Usually once you get into later game, it's expected to have characters with 2 or even 3 health. But anyway, he has 1 defense. Again, that's pitiful. That means almost anybody can attack him. It's quite the bare minimum to survive. 2 attack, and he has range. The reason why his stats are so low is because, even lower than some 1 costs, is because he has this nice superpower called Icebreaker. During the main, you can pay a blue and you can freeze an enemy location. Now, freezing, when I said about characters, it stops them from attacking. When you freeze a location, it exhausts it and it can't be ready on its next turn, and it doesn't provide recruitment points. So you can't use it to pay for stuff. You can't use it to climb, which is a special ability in the game. I'm not exactly sure if it can't be used as a superpower, but I do know that you can't pay with it, you can't climb with it, because you need to exhaust the resource to climb. It says it in the ability that you can't use it to provide recruit points. Now, exhausted resources not providing recruitment points doesn't really matter for some abilities, but the point is, I think it's a really nice ability. You turn off this location from your opponent for at least a decent turn, and that means that their curve might get completely messed up, especially if they're trying to build, or rather they really need to get a certain character out this turn or the next turn. So ultimately, I think it's a really nice ability. It's more of an annoyance than a really game crushing ability. I'm not sure how great it is, but I do think it's pretty cool. It's Iceman, he's freezing stuff, and depending on the deck you're trying to play or the person you're playing against, it probably gets better or worse. I don't think it's crazy competitive, though. I'm not sure if it's going to see much play. Obviously, we're going to have to see. Cost. Okay, so the next 2 cost in this box is Blink. She has 2 costs. Obviously, she has 6 defense and 1 health. 6 defense is actually pretty high for 2 costs, to keep that in mind. And then she has the superpower Displacement Field. During combat, any turn combat, she can pay a red, and as this combat resolves, each enemy character strikes itself instead of a character on your side. So that means that they attack you, they're big, they swing in, you flip it around, Uno reverse them, and then bang, they hit themselves. I actually really like the superpower. I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty cool. Definitely thematic. Nice. On to the 3 costs in this box. We have Havoc. He's a 3 cost, 4 attack, 5 health, flight range, 4 attack, 5 defense, keep saying health, sorry. 1 health or 1 wound. He has his keyword power, Energy Conversion. When a character on your side uses a superpower, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it. When an enemy character uses a superpower, though, you can put a -1/-1 counter on it. Very good superpower, very good keyword power. Being like this keyword is actually a very key important thing to this power, because it means you don't have to pay anything for it. It's just always active. When you're using superpowers, you'll be gaining more +1/+1s. When your opponent's using them, they'll be gaining -1/-1 counters, especially for the stats for this character. The cost, the keyword power, I think he's nice and cool. Definitely fun for casual play. Again, I'm not too sure how competitive it's going to be. I think he's good. The rest of the main characters are multiple man. They all are pretty much the same, except for small key differences, so I'm going to try to blitz through them. So we have they're all 3 costs, and with a 2/2 stat line. That's all of them. Now, they all have the superpower Swarm, which basically means you can have multiple characters of the same name on the field. If you don't know, in the versus system, you can't have multiple characters with the same name. So if I have one multiple man, I can't have another, but Swarm allows me to do so. Obviously, if you're into the comics, multiple man multiplies himself, so that's a fitting ability. It was just one of a kind, which all of them do, but being there's 4 of them, enforce pretty much the staple. That's how many of a certain card you can have in your deck. It basically means that they're just all different. You can't have 4 of each of them, but you have 1 of each of them, which is 4. So it's kind of really one card that do slightly different things. I'm happy that all the art is different. This is a bit of a side note and a side tangent, but it would be pretty lame if all these characters had the same artwork. Now, again, they only have small, slight differences, so I'm going to try to go through them fast. They all have this keyword superpower called Duper Power, which at the start of your main phase, you may search your deck for a card named Multiple Man and put him onto your side. There's been a Multiple Man in the past. I'm sure there's been at least one. So this actually can work with that guy as well. You can put that guy onto your side, who is also another Multiple Man and has Swarm. So you could have all 4 of these and all 4 of the other one in your deck, and you could sort of swarm the field with a bunch of Multiple Men. Nice little superpower. He has this one in particular. The first one we're going to look at has range, and he has quick draw. We're going to refer to him as quick draw multiple man. And while quick draw basically says while multiple man is range attacking, enemy characters can't strike him, which basically usually if your opponent doesn't have range, they can't strike you back while you're range attacking anyway. But if they also have range, then they can strike you back. This power protects you from that. You're going to draw your gun faster than the other people who have guns or ranged weapons. The other one is a martial artist. He does not have range, but when he's in melee combat, so he's kind of like a direct counter to the other one, he gets +2/+2. So it makes him a 4/4 while he's in melee. This multiple man, he went to the dojo. The third one we're going to look at is the smart one. He has genius. He also does not have range. At the start of your turn, genius basically says draw a card. So obviously, if your opponent doesn't deal with this multiple man fast enough, you can start gaining some cards and get an advantage over your opponent. The last one doesn't have an extra keyword superpower, but his gimmick is he has 1 extra health than the rest of them. They all have 1 health, except for the last one. He has 2 health. They're all pretty much the same card with slight differences. But in terms of all of them together, I like this card design. I like the game space design that they're in with this card. It's very thematic, even though it's very simple as a design choice. And obviously, I'm sort of a guy who likes to swarm the field when I play card games. So this is definitely a cool character and card to me. Hope we get a multiple man main character soon, because again, I like to play Swarm. Okay, on to the 4 cost characters. We have just 2. Banshee is the first one we're going to look at. 1 health, 6 attack, 5 defense. X-Men supporting character. 4 cost, obviously. He has flight, like the main character. He has a really cool, really good keyword power. He has the keyword power Night. When Banshee appears, you may daze an enemy character. Dazing, again, is sort of like stunning them. In other games, it would probably be called stun, but because stun was already used in this game for a different meaning, they use daze. But it's basically, it takes them out of the fight for a turn. It makes them not be able to be attacked or attack themselves. So if they're a pesky little problem for you that turn, you can't really get past them. They're really big. They have a bunch of +1/+1 counters. You daze them. Incidentally, when you get dazed, your +1/+1 counters fall off of you. So you put this guy down for 4. Turn 4, easy. It's really not that expensive. You daze a character. It doesn't have to be a main character. It doesn't have to be a supporting character. It can be either one of the 2. And if they're giving you trouble that turn, you're out of the way so you can do what you want to do that turn. I love this supporting character. I think he's really cool and really good. I'm pretty sure you're going to see a bit of him if you're a competitive player. Now, next up is Polaris. She has 3 defense, which is pretty low for 4 calls, but she has 7 attack, so obviously kind of makes up for it. Flight and range, so those are good to have those both. She has the ability to manipulate magnetic fields. During the build phase, she can pay a green. Reveal the top cards of your deck to your reveal equipment. Put the rest of it into your hand. Remove the rest from the game. Removing the rest from the game is a pretty steep price to pay for getting an equipment off the top of your deck. Now, depending on how many equipment you play in your deck, this could be easy to hit, and you probably won't end up removing that many cards. But still, if you happen to hit or reveal a card that you really need that isn't the equipment that you really need, you end up removing that from the game. Removing from the game, obviously, like lost zoning a card in Pokemon. So what I'm trying to say, it's a pretty steep price to pay. Now, moving on to the 5 cost cards in the box, we have Professor X, 5 costs, X-Men team affiliated. He has 4 attack, 9 defense, range, 1 health. 1 health is pretty low for a 5 cost character. Usually by the time you get to 5, people are going to start expecting at least 2 health. At least that's what I've come to see. 5 cost characters with 2 health are a lot more common, or rather a lot more expected. By the time you get to 5, you want your character to start to stick around a little bit, and you don't want them to die. Though it's not uncommon to see a 1 health character at 5. Anyway, he has the ability Welcome Home superpower. During the build phase, you pay yellow. Look at an enemy player's hand. You may choose a supporting character there and recruit it. Important note, when you use the superpower, if you want to recruit a character in your opponent's hand, you have to pay for it. So you have to have the recruitment points to play their character. And being the fact that half the time your opponent won't even be playing the same type of deck as you, unless you're in a mirror match, this ability is almost always going to be pretty useless. Best use I can think of it is trying to basically buy a character so they can't play it. And then, of course, you have the obvious that if a character is generically good, you can pay for it and use it yourself, and then obviously not only will they not get it, but also you can use it for yourself. Generally, though, this ability is not useless. You have to pay a yellow before even looking at your opponent's hand, and if they have straight dog trash, all plot twists, all equipment maybe, or just really bad characters you don't want to play or don't need, you'll end up just going to be paying for something that you don't need at all. It's like, I really don't like the superpower in the sense I don't really think it's any good. Next, you have Sage. She's on the 5 cost, 2 health. Again, 2 health is going to be what most people expect at 5. Flight range, good. 10 defense, great. 0 attack, not that great, especially at 5. But the reasoning is pretty good. She has a human supercomputer computer power. When Sage attacks, she gains attack this combat until her attack is equal to her the defender's defense. That's a really good superpower. Now, I want competitive people to correct me if I'm wrong, if that's really good, but as far as I can tell, that's just strictly good. She basically always has enough attack, just enough attack to stun the opponent. This ability can be countered by a few cards in the game. As far as I can tell, any card that buffs your defense during the combat will instantly beat this ability, because she only gains the attack when she attacks in that instance, but after that her attack stays stationary at whatever that number became. So if you have 10 defense and she attacks, she gains 10, she goes up to 10, and then you play a card to give you plus 2 defense and you're at 12 now. She stays at 10, she doesn't just go up to 12 all of a sudden. So, there's another card I think called Boiling Point that sort of counters this card, or rather this kind of works against this card. But generally, I think this card is pretty good, especially at 5. It's going to be one of your best options as an X-Men player, right out of this arc at the very least. Off the top of my head, I'm talking. For the 6 cost, we have Cyclops. He has 1 health, which is definitely low by the time you get to 6. By 6, you want to see 2 health. Range, 5 defense, 11 attack. 5 is low at 6, but he has 11 attack. Cyclops is playing aggressive here. Fast Trigger, which is a new keyword power as far as I know. While in range combat, Cyclops strikes before characters without fast trigger. It's ferocious of range, which basically means if you're attacking another ranged character or a ranged character attacking you, you're going to hit them, especially being the fact you have 11 attack. You're probably going to hit them before they have a chance to deal any damage back to you. But if you happen to be in melee combat with a character, or if the character also has fast trigger, you're most likely just dead on arrival, or rather sorry, that's not what I mean to say. You're just dead. So, it's a very aggressive blast cannon type character. Though, being the fact he has range and his fast trigger ability, I think it's pretty cool. 2 health would have been nice, though. Next up for the 6 cost, we have Sunfire. Sunfire, he's a 6 cost, 2 health. Again, that's what you would expect. His 3/3 stat line, which is pitifully low for a 6 cost. You expect a lot higher than that. Flight range, but the reason he has 6/3 because his Solar Fire keyword power, not a superpower. Still, Sunfire has +3/+3 for each blue location on every side. This is similar to the Bishop thing I was talking about later. Maybe they're sort of sowing the seeds for someone to play a deck where they just play a bunch of blue locations but don't use them. I don't understand really how good this power could be. Similar to Bishop, it's cool if you and your opponent are playing blues and for some reason you guys aren't spinning them crazy. But quite frankly, by the time half the time, by the time you get this character out, you'll have 1 or 2 blues. Your opponent might not be playing blues. He's really going to be 9/9, which is high for a 6 cost, but the ability's not crazy, is my point. And because it's a constant power, unlike Bishop, if you spin that blue, his attack and his stats go down. If your opponent has blues on their side and they spin them, his stats go down. I don't think it's a very good power. I think it's very fun power, though. I don't really know what decks exactly would want to use this, but surely some decks could figure it out. There are a couple. Blue is kind of like one of the most powerful and popular colors, as far as I can tell. Okay, we're down to it. There's 7 cost cards to go. Now, 7 costs in this box have 2 really good, cool options. First is Rogue. I'm going to talk about her first. She has 9/9 stat line, high for 7, flight, good, or rather just really important. 2 health, what you would expect from 7 cost. She has the Rage keyword power, which I'm pretty sure is new. When she gets attacked, you get a +1/+1 counter on her. So usually if she's on defense, she's going to be a 10/10, which is good. She also has a superpower, Wonderful Strength. Any turn combat, green, double the +1/+1 counters on Rogue. She can use this power any number of times each turn. Generally, you're going to be using this on defense, not on offense. But you could obviously use it on offense. Doubling +1/+1 counters on her, great. Not to mention, you're not just giving her +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter, or giving her +1/+1 equal to her +1/+1 counters, or anything like that. Because this is important when you're giving her more +1/+1 counters, which means after this battle's over, she's going to keep that stat buff. So if she gets attacked and she gets a +1/+1, you use this power, she get 2 +1/+1s. Generally, you're gonna need another way to put +1/+1 counters on Rogue for this ability to be really that good. But if you're playing a deck where that's gonna happen, this can really add up fast. Because again, she's gonna keep the stat buffs between each combat. Each time someone tries to attack her to take her down, she's gonna get more +1/+1 counters, and I think it really will be able to pile up. So much so that I think. Okay, last supporting character of the box. We have Dupe. He's a 7 cost, 1 health. 1 is low, especially at 7, but it's okay because the character is a sort of joke character. He has a flight range, 7/7 stat line. He has the keyword power, travel across the margin. The margins. When you recruit Dupe, you may put him into your hand, and you turn him face around so he can, quote unquote, watch the game. So basically, you make it so your opponent can see that he's facing towards the opponent. You see the back of his card, they see the front of it. And he has the superpower, Resident of Marginalia, margin something. Not really sure how to pronounce that. But during the main phase, you can play a blue, yellow, and red. And if Dupe is watching the game, you can choose a phase for the next enemy player to skip, the draw, recovery, build, or main. And this ability is kind of steep cost-wise, but in pure uses of it, it does have a usefulness, because depending on where you are in the game currently, you can make some cool things happen. If you're ahead and your opponent is trying to catch up, you can make them skip the draw or the recovery phase, because in that case they literally now can't recover, which means bring their characters back into the game in fighting form, or they can't draw, which means they can't advance their board state. They're looking for something to win the game, you're stopping them from doing that. They can't draw that turn. If you're winning, you most likely want to skip the main or build phase. Main so they can't attack, try to make a comeback. Build so they can't build up their board state or anything like that. Obviously, all of these should also be used if you're losing as well. So if you want to play defensively, skip the main phase, they can't attack. You're afraid they're going to play a big dude this turn, skip the build phase, they can't play any cards. Skip the recovery phase, the big guy's not going to recover this turn. Skip the draw phase, they can't dig for the extra piece they need to finish you off. Whatever it ends up being. But I think it does have uses, but I think the joke aspect in the first part of the ability, basically, affecting to pay these three resource symbols, which is a pretty steep cost. Most decks won't be able to cover very easily. I mean, it definitely has its uses, but I don't think anybody's really going to be playing Dupe that heavily, especially not in competitive play. Okay, on to the plot twists. Those were the characters we just covered, but we still have to cover, of course, the plot twists of the game. There's only a few plot twists that are strictly on the X-Men side of things. We have This and That, which is a nice plot twist that puts a +1/+1 counter on a character on your side, and a -1/-1 counter on a character or on an enemy character in this combat. So the ability is kind of weak and generic. I don't think anybody's really going to end up playing this unless for some reason you're targeting down the specificity of putting in -1 counters on your opponent, +1/+1 counters on yourself, because this does both at the same time. But generally, I feel like this card won't be seeing too much play. The other card I want to talk about is Defend the Weak. It's another combat card. You can choose a character on your side to get +1 attack, +3 defense as combat. I think it's good. +3 defense. Now that I think about it, I think it's okay. +3 defense is obviously what you're really going to be playing this card for. The +1 attack is just there because the number, just to make the numbers add up. They didn't want to make it +4 defense, but they didn't want it to be just +3 either. So really just to add to numbers, I think they gave the +1 attack here. I don't think it's going to matter in many cases, though of course it could end up mattering. I think it's a nice generic little plot twists. And if your pool of plot twists is low or lacking, if you're a new player, then I think it's something that you might want to add to your deck. Obviously, you're playing a defensive character like Jean Grey, who actually features in the artwork of this card, then you might want to invest in this card. You invest this base in your deck for this card, just because your opponent thinks they're going to attack, deal some damage within the week. I think there's better options probably for your time. I'm not as a defensive card, but just as your time in general. But it's nice. You have the Build It Up plot twist. It's mutant loyalty, which means that you can only have it in your deck if you have a Brotherhood of Mutant card or an X-Men card. But the important thing to still note is that it still has the X-Men team affiliation, which means even if you're playing an all Brotherhood of Mutants deck, that means you can add this to your deck, but you won't be able to play it unless you have an X-Men character on the field. During the build phase, you turn 2 face down the basic locations with different names face up. Definitely a good plot twist. I think this is going to feature in a couple decks, especially ones that focus on one superpower in particular, or rather they focus, like Storm for a particular, they focus on many different power symbols for their deck to work. I think this card is going to be it's going to be very important, integral to decks like Storm's game plan. Okay, last key plot twist for the day, we have Secondary Mutation. Its team affiliations are both X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants, which means that if you have either or on the field, you can play this card. It's Mutant Loyalty, which means you have to have only Brotherhood of Mutants or X-Men cards in your deck to have this card in your deck at all. And then, yes, during the build phase, you choose a character on your side. They randomly get one of the following powers that they don't already have for the rest of the game. And there's Flight, Range, Berserker, Dodge, Ferocious, and Lethal. That's 6, so obviously you just roll 6-sided dice. 1 is Flight, so on and so forth. Flight's fine, Range's fine, Berserker's fine, Dodge is fine, Ferocious is actually pretty good to end up hitting that. Lethal is pretty good too. The important thing is that most of these keyword powers are kind of generic, but the main thing that I think about this card is the fact that they're random. If you could choose a character and choose to give them one of these keyword powers, then I think this card becomes actually pretty good, because some characters could benefit from some keyword powers over others. But depending on the character, even if they don't already have that keyword power, it might end up becoming useless to them. Like a character who's focused on melee combat, you play Secondary Mutation, they get ranged. Okay, they have range for the rest for the rest of the game. They have range for the rest of the game, but they don't need that. They're not going to use that, and it's really not going to be that important. So I genuinely think that this card is okay. It's kind of mid, depending on obviously the deck you're playing and the cards you have in your deck, as all cards are. You could end up playing this to decent effect, but I think the fact that it's random means it'll never go into the part of the realm of being a good card, quote unquote. And with that, I've covered all the cards on the X-Men side of the box. Obviously, in this box, it comes with an X-Men special location, which can create any resource for an X-Men character, and it comes with some resource cards for your deck. But that's really the only card that I need to talk about, the only ones that aren't self-explanatory. Okay, so what are my thoughts about the X-Men side of the set in particular? I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here, because I have one compound word, or 2 words, depending on how you look at it, and it's Nightcrawler. Better, or more importantly, the lack thereof. Why wasn't he in this set? Obviously, this set is trying to not only get new players in, and at the same time draw in old players. The thing is that because they're trying to get new players, they're going to use characters that they know are popular. Cyclops, Storm, Professor X, important characters integral to the story, Jean Grey. Banshee's only really here because they know that they use only characters we've seen before. We would actually riot. but half the characters you get in this box are characters who have previous main characters. People like Cyclops, Storm, and Professor X each have like two main characters that came out before these main characters. They didn't need to be in the set. You know who needed to be in the set? His name was Nightcrawler. Jean Grey also didn't need to be here. Not to mention the card is not amazing. That's genuinely my main problem with this set. I was really hoping to see some cool main characters that we were waiting for a long time that haven't had cards yet. Not to mention characters who are integral to the House of X story arc. Not to mention characters that are very popular. So obviously Nightcrawler is probably what most people are thinking about when you're talking about, oh wow, we've seen all these main characters before, when are we going to get Nightcrawler? That's probably the first one that comes to mind. Obviously, like I said earlier in this video, I would have really liked to see Havoc get a main character. I would have liked to see Bishop get a main character, but that's kind of just, biased because I like the character. The point is, there's a lot of characters that should have gotten main characters over people like Cyclops. And don't get me wrong, I am a huge Cyclops fan. I like Professor X too, like Storm. Do think they're cool characters, but being the fact that they've had main characters before, they've had main characters who were X-Men before. So even if for this team affiliation, unlike Jean Grey, I'll give her a slide because we've never had an X-Men card of her before. We've seen all these guys before, and some of them, Cyclops, Storm. I think both of those. I'm fine if you need to put Professor X in there, but Cyclops, Storm, I really don't think they should have gotten new main characters. Instead, I would have rather we seen Nightcrawler, Thunderbird, Sunfire, other maybe characters from the giant size X-Men, or just characters who are integral to House of X, the story arc in the comic books. I'm going to probably have more to say about this when I go over the Brotherhood and Mutant side of the box, because my frustration, or rather my disappointment, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. It goes beyond what I actually can speak with words. I don't think there was a logical reason to include Cyclops over someone like Nightcrawler. In fact, at this point, I think the designers have something against Nightcrawler. But moving on from Nightcrawler as a character not being in this box, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about just, beyond the characters, how well is the set designed. I'm pretty sure I already said this, but it's designed with new players in mind. All the characters are very basic. All the abilities are very simple, easy to understand. Nothing crazy is going on. No too complicated. The most complicated card in this set is Dupe, or rather, the most complicated card in the X-Men side of the set is Dupe. So really, they went for a very simplistic design for this box, and I gotta respect that to a degree, but I don't really think that it was the right play. How do I put this? Because here's the thing, we've had X-Men sets in the past, and I know they're very old for the most part, but to basically reiterate what we've already have, even down to the fact that we're getting the same special locations we had before, which is the first time I'm pretty sure this ever happened in the history of the Roost system, to PCG, getting reprints of old special locations. I think they're sort of realizing they haven't made an X-Men set in the wild, and they're trying to breathe new life into the X-Men set. The design isn't bad. I kind of like the design for most of the cards. Most of it's thematic, but again, very simple. I would have preferred to build off of previous sets, regardless of how old they were, in this form of getting new characters we haven't seen before and having some more thematic, crazy effects. Though I like that they kept it simple at the very same time, because I'm a newer player, and obviously I understand that a lot of new players are going to hop into the game looking for something to buy. This is new, this is simple, this is popular, because obviously we have X-Men, we have Wolverine, it's going to be in one of the later boxes, we have Cyclops, we have Professor X, we have Storm, we have popular characters, very simple to understand, a nice gateway to new players, but as for anybody who's a returning player or old player, this set may end up being very boring, and really, if you really zoom out of the game and take a look, it might end up being a skip with logical thinking for some people, in the sense of, well, how much does it really add to my fun factor? Competitive wise, you almost can't skip any set, because you never know what's going to become integral to the meta. And yes, we won't get Nightcrawler, but there is a sunshine, a ray of hope that could come our way. We also did not get a lot of other characters that are very popular. We didn't even get an Island of Krakoa special location. And so, what I believe might end up happening is that there's a good possibility that we'll get another X-Men set in the future. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, X-Men are the most supported, or I think they are at least, out of any team affiliation, as in they had the most sets based around them alone. And that is true, but at the very same time, I think we need at least one more X-Men set to give us Nightcrawler and some other characters as well. Okay, that was my short but not so short review and opinions on the House of X box, at least the X-Men half. Obviously, I'm going to post the Brotherhood Mutants half later in the future. Hopefully, at this point, by the time this video gets uploaded, or after at the very least, I'm going to make a video explaining how to play the Versus System 2 PCG for anybody who's very confused by this video. Hopefully, you can go watch that. Hopefully, it's out by the time this video gets out. But anyway, point is, I like the box. Gives me Cyclops. Again, I'm a huge Cyclops fan. Just think Nightcrawler would have been a better option. I think the game is the box is very simple, and so I think if you're a newer player and you're getting into the Versus system, definitely pick this box up. And if you're an X-Men fan, even more so. But that has been the Obsidian Roost's little review on the House of X Versus System box. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time.